Yo, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another free agency signing video. This is a interesting one. We were talking about the Mets today, and they're in talks with two players that have no room on this roster. Let's just be upfront about that. Trey Mancini and Adam Duvall are in talks with the Mets, and that's where I just ask you the question. Like, usually I don't start out these videos as just like this interest. I have one take or the other. You know, I'm on one side of the fence. I'm on one side of the fence, but this is just interesting why this is even on the fence. You know what I'm saying? Why are we even asking this question? So that's what I want to ask you. Down in the comments, is this a good idea or not? Because I don't think so. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So Trey Mancini, we already talked about him maybe going to the Cubs, right? And I think that makes sense for that kind of team. You are in the process of rebuilding. You've gotten your superstar in Dansby Swanson. You need support. I think Trey Mancini, honestly, Adam Duvall, both players, I think they are very good support players. They are guys who will hit 20 home runs, drive in 40 runs, 50 runs a year, bat around 250 to 270. Like, they are solid guys, but they are nowhere near half the team that already exists on the Mets. And they're nowhere near the superstar level that I think they're going for, maybe. If this is to bolster your team and make your team more complete, maybe it makes sense, because both of these guys are not finding a starting position on this team. They would be bench players, and maybe they can be trade baits at the deadline, but again, if they're not even playing half the time, I don't know why you would go get them in the first place. So let's talk about Trey Mancini first. He hit a 1.4 WAR in 2022, had a great first half. He was batting .268, had a 113 OPS plus, 10 home runs, 41 RBI, 92 games. Pretty solid year, right? I mean, that is maybe a little bit under, or maybe right on track, right around there for the years that he had in Baltimore. And honestly, I would say this year is even more impressive because they moved the wall back. It's a bigger ballpark. Trey Mancini did good in Baltimore, and honestly, that's why he got traded to a contending team. He ended up winning a World Series with Houston, so that says something, but he maybe got one or two hits in the postseason, maybe, and he really struggled. 51 games, had a 176 batting average, and 75 OPS plus. He did have 8 home runs and 22 RBI, but 3 of those came in like the first 2 days or something like that when he got traded, and then he fell off a cliff. So, yeah, he got a ring, and that's great, and maybe that helps him moving into this offseason as a free agent, but he also hasn't been signed yet, so maybe not. But he's such an interesting case because obviously he came back from cancer and beat that, and he's played really well, and that is a guy you want in the clubhouse, right? He is a leader on the team. I don't see anything wrong with these numbers. I mean, take out Houston, but there's nothing wrong with his numbers, even in Houston. He was a supporting staff member. He was okay, right? But where does he fit on the Mets besides left bench? Because you've got, I pulled it up here, Daniel Vogelbach as your DH, so he's not going to play there. And of course, if he's not your starting DH, you've got Alvarez, you've got Darren Ruff, and Pete Alonso when he can't play first base. If you go to first base, where you would maybe play, okay, Pete Alonso, Daniel Vogelbach, okay. Like, is he playing every third day? Is he playing in the outfield? I mean, you've got Canna, you've got McNeil maybe, you've got Marte, you've got Nimmo. Where is he gonna play? The same question goes for Adam Duvall, by the way. Maybe Duvall gets in a little bit more at DH, and Mancini gets a little bit more in pinch hitting and first base if Alonso is more of the DH kind of guy someday. Like, they are very, very, very much bench players. And specifically with Trey Mancini, yeah, he's a leader. Yeah, he's got a great story, but where does he fit? He doesn't. Like, again, for the Cubs and a team that is rebuilding and needs some guy who will support Dansby Swanson and, you know, hopefully he has a good season, great. But for the Mets to go spend another $10 million or $12 million, whatever that Trey Mancini's contract is, he would be a bench player. And again, maybe you get lucky, he has a good season, you trade him at the deadline for something. I think there are teams that would want him, but he's not going to get enough at-bats to even have that conversation. Let's talk about Duvall. It's the same exact conversation, by the way, so we don't need to, like, overly do this, but Duvall was a guy who is getting older, by the way, too. Like, Mancini is, 20? Oh, he's 31, too. Didn't even know that. Okay, so he's 31. Duvall's 33 and has not played a full season since 2020, 2021, I guess. And last year had a pretty bad year, arguably one of his worst, at least since 2016 when he was an All-Star. I mean, the dude bat .213, okay, had 12 home runs and 36 RBI, OPS plus of 87. He had a negative WAR. I mean, if you're talking about Trey Mancini not fitting on a roster, this guy, first base and left fielder, he's slow. Where is he going to play? Again, left bench times 2. I actually really like Adam Duvall, and I think that if given the right team, given the right circumstance, I think this is a guy who could make a contending team better. He could be on a team that can get him at bats. Oakland, right? He could be the star of that team, getting a ton of at bats, being the power bat in that lineup. But the Mets, like that, all it does is drag it down. And honestly, same with Mancini. He had a really, really bad second half of the year, did not do well in the postseason. Are you going to throw $10 to $12, $15 million at this guy to sit on the bench and not do, Pete Alonso things, like Mark Canha things? Like, I just don't see a world where either of these two guys get playing time. And I think that's the biggest thing is, yeah, if you want them on the team because they fulfill a requirement that you need as to make a more complete team, get them pinch hitting opportunities, okay. And if you're from the player standpoint, this is a great team. The Mets are a great team. They might have one of the top 3 lineups and pitching rotations in baseball. They are going to be good next year, and they darn well better be because they spent so much money. And they lost Carlos Correa. Are they trying to fill these two players into the gaps of Carlos Correa, even though they play different positions? I don't know. But it's like the Mets just want to spend more money. It just doesn't make sense. And there's not even a really good reason that the Mets should be in conversation with this. I even forgot one player. Andrew McCutchen has also been in conversation with the Mets. That is 3 players over the age of 30, might I add, that are nowhere near who they used to be. Again, that's not me bashing them. That's just like, these guys could be, I wouldn't say stars, but they could be better players as players on another team. But from the sense of, do we want them to win rings? Like, from a player-centric perspective, if I was Duvall, if I was McCutchen, do I want to go somewhere where I can win a ring? Then sure. Like, I want to sit on the bench and watch the Mets win. But from a Mets perspective, these 3 players are not going to be seeing the field. They will be seeing the water cooler, and that's about it. So the last thing, I guess, Andrew McCutchen is in this conversation. I did forget to mention him. He did play a lot last year, 134 games. He had a .237 average, 99 OPS plus. He's been right around 100 the last couple of years. Had 17 home runs, 69 RBI. He had a quality season. A pretty quiet season, but he's 36 years old. I mean, give him a one. I think he's the best option of the 3, but he's 36. Like, he's not going to be able to play forever. And for a guy who, give him a ring, right? Like, I don't think he has a ring, so give him a ring. And I honestly would like to see that. But from a player perspective, from a signing perspective, it just doesn't make sense for any of these 3 guys. And that's just where I want to end this and ask the question to you. Convince me, I guess. Is it worth convincing? I just don't see the Mets. The Mets don't need to do anything else. That's the point of this video. The Mets don't need to do anything else. They are simply, at this point, it is a game to take talent away from other teams. They want to put as much talent on their team to, 1, probably trade at the deadline, but 2, to take the talent away from other teams so that they cannot compete with them. Because there is no reason on this earth that the Mets should be going out and get anyone else. They don't need anybody else. So, again, that's what I just asked the question to you. Should the Mets do it? Which of the 3 players should they go after? What do you think? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.